Amazon's The Rings of Power has received an immense amount of backlash from trailers to photos and now with interviews. We're only getting closer to the show's release, and that means they're ramping up promotional material. And in the interviews they've released, their own showrunners can't seem to do themselves any favors because they admitted recently to not having enough experience to create a show like this, but also how they didn't even really have a plan. I have a bunch of things to show off, but before we get into the topic at hand, if you enjoy the content that I create, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Follow me on social media like Twitter or mine so that you can see when my content is posted. And of course, if you do really enjoy the videos and the live streams that I create, please consider becoming a Dark Titan via Patreon for just $1 a month, or support the channel via YouTube memberships. All of the links are in the description, and of course, I do really appreciate all of the support. So I primarily wanted to show off this Entertainment Weekly article, but it says, "Welcome to Numenor, get an exclusive look at the Lord of the Rings, the Rings of Power." Now, I've talked a lot about Rings of Power on this channel already, and I plan to continue to do so until it releases, and until I'm able to fully review the content that they've put out, but I've been very underwhelmed by the exclusive looks we've gotten at this show. I'm going to be honest, the outfits seem lackluster. I'm not sure about a lot of the actor choices. The CGI in the teasers does look very beautiful, but I'm not here to watch simply a CGI fest. I'm also here to see amazing acting, great storytelling, great interactions between characters, and I'm not really sure if we're going to get any of that. But the article says Wayne Chi Yip will never forget walking through Numenor. The director was one of the many creatives who helped bring J.R.R. Tolkien's Legacy Island to life as a key location in the Rings of Power. The opulent human kingdom has never been before seen depicted on screen, and Yip and the showrunners, J.D. Payne and Patrick McKay, worked closely with production designer Ramsey Avery to help sketch out every corner of the coastal capital. But it wasn't until Yip stepped on set that he realized the full scale and detail of the island. The crew had essentially built an entire seaside city from the ground up, stone by stone. Now, obviously, this does sound fairly impressive, I think, to most people. Hearing about how they created basically a whole seaside city does sound pretty cool. It sounds like they're putting a lot of effort into it. And while this show does have a giant amount of money behind it, you have to consider a lot of this money isn't even really going to the details of season 1. While yes, there is, $1 billion going into the show, we're not talking about $1 billion put into this one season alone. At the start of a show, it takes a lot of money to get things right. Costumes, CGI details, set pieces, establishing these details of the show isn't cheap, and things like costumes and sets were created to last several seasons. So maybe half of this amount is going just to this season's content, and then the rest are going to things that will be reused, which does help in some ways because then you don't see small discrepancies with outfits or with set pieces, but at the same time, they're talking about how they're building, an entire seaside city, but we also know that they're changing production locations, where in season 1, they focused on New Zealand, and in the next seasons, they're planning to film primarily in the UK, so it doesn't sound very positive hearing about a seaside city that was built that is going to have to be torn down. Not only is the show an ambitious new chapter in one of the most beloved franchises of all time, but it's also an uncertain swing, a pricey new saga that hopes to redefine fantasy television. With a reported price tag stretching well above $1 billion, The Rings of Power stands to be the most expensive TV series ever made. More importantly, the series faces the scrutiny of millions of fans, all of whom have spent the last few decades poring over Tolkien's writing. That devoted fandom is why Payne and McKay pondered every tiny detail on the Rings of Power, right down to each stone in Numenor. It sounds like they're trying to praise them quite a bit in this article. Of course, they're getting these exclusive scoops, they're getting these first images, so they want to praise them so that they get more content in the future, but It was one place that we were just laser focused on saying, we need to get this right. I would hope they would say that about every detail in the show, because they have to get every detail right here. It's not just one location or one character, it's the whole show and the whole setting in general. Now, this is the part that I really wanted to talk about. It says the Rings of Power isn't a direct adaptation of an existing Tolkien novel. Now, this is the truth that they haven't wanted to admit, because they knew how much people would fight back against the show when they came out and directly admitted it. They kept saying, well, we looked at all of this work and we really took stories and details from them. We wanted to follow it as closely as possible. Yet now they're veering off the path, saying, yeah, it's not supposed to be a direct retelling of anything that he created, and we don't actually know how they're going to do the show, because throughout the teasers we've seen different events that have happened throughout the span of thousands of years, so we don't know where they're going to go with this show. Clearly they've got this wild idea, all of these different things that they want to do, but we don't actually know if it's all going to come together and make a good series. Now that it's getting closer to the official release date, though, they're changing their wording, saying, well, it's only inspired by his notes. It isn't a direct adaptation of existing content, so they're definitely changing their tune here. It says after Amazon closed its multi-million-dollar deal with the Tolkien estate in 2018, the streaming giant began soliciting pitches from different creators. The winners were Payne and McKay, two largely unknown writers whose highest profile job at the point was uncredited work on the Star Trek franchise. We did not have the resume that might make a studio head think we were a natural choice for this, he admits. We went up for it basically saying, well, let's leave everything on the field and see what happens. Despite their relative inexperience, Payne and McKay were lifelong Tolkien geeks, and their pitch centered on a story they themselves had always wanted to see on screen, the Second Age. Now, I'm all for individuals getting opportunities, even if they don't have an extensive resume behind them. There are amazing creators out there who haven't been given fair opportunities, and they deserve their chance to shine. But when it comes to something like Lord of the Rings, Tolkien's work, the Second Age, any of it, you would think they would want the highest profile individuals they could get for this project. We are talking about billions of dollars here. We are talking about 5 seasons they're planning to do with this show. I just do not have any faith in them, especially where they're changing their wording constantly. At one point it's an adaptation of his work. Now it's only loosely inspired. I have no faith in them. They have given me absolutely no reasons to trust them at this point. It says we were not interested in doing a show about the younger version of the same world you knew, where it's a little bit of a prequel, he explains. We wanted to go way, way, way back and find a story that could exist on its own 2 feet. This was one we felt hadn't been told on the level and scale and with the depth we felt it deserved. While I could be excited for a Second Age show, while I could be excited for literally anything that Tolkien created, I feel like we all got excited. We were all hopeful about the Rings of Power, and this is what we get: inexperienced creators, potentially mediocre stories, and a show that takes this absolutely fucking amazing source material and does nothing with it. I am still wanting this show to come out. I want it to prove me wrong, okay? I want it to be absolutely amazing, but everything we've seen points in the opposite direction. I mean, even look at the latest teaser for this show. It is almost at 200,000 dislikes on YouTube compared to only 60,000 likes. People are not very excited for this show anymore. The more we see, the more skeptical we become. And I just don't know how this show is going to turn out. We're only a few weeks away at this point, but hearing this be admitted in articles that they were not the natural choices for this show makes me very skeptical. But that's all that I really had to talk about in this video. Let everyone know your thoughts in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed, please make sure to give it a like, share it, and subscribe to the channel. And of course, if you didn't, make sure to give it a dislike. I appreciate your support either way, but I will talk to you all again in the next video really soon.